and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Here's what we're looking at. Delta 8 hemp products have seen a surge in popularity, but a proposed Chicago ordinance could be a buzzkill for the budding industry.
Our Spotlight Politics team on a deal that would phase out tipped minimum wage in Chicago.
I love showing my culture to everyone.
And meet a local mom keeping a Mexican tradition alive, one step at a time. Now to some of today's top stories. The city is suing chemical giant Monsanto for allegedly poisoning Chicago's ground, water, and air. Mayor Brandon Johnson announced the lawsuit today, claiming Monsanto is releasing polychlorinated biphenyls, or PCBs, into the air, soil, and waterways of the city. PCBs are toxic contaminants that cause damage to human health and development. Johnson alleges Monsanto knew about the health risks and misled the public and is seeking damages to cover cleanup costs from getting those chemicals out of Chicago's waterways.
South suburban neighbors experienced a so-called 500-year flood event during storms over the weekend, leaving the city's infrastructure stretched thin. The Calumet City engineer says the city saw 9.5 inches of rain in just over 2.5 hours in a very localized area. As a result, the rainfall caused submerged vehicles and flooded basements. The Calumet City Fire Department says it responded to 87 calls for help. As city officials detailed next steps in recovery and upgrades, Mayor Thaddeus Jones was critical of some of the city's older people.
So today is about the services that we provided to our residents. In some cases, free towing. In a lot of cases, our fire department going out, saving our residents. But that's what this city is about.
A Chicago business and philanthropic leader is now a U.S. Special Representative for Ukraine's economic recovery. President Joe Biden appointed former Obama Commerce Secretary Penny Pritzker to the new post. Pritzker will be in charge of coordinating donations and U.S. business investment in Ukraine, as well as working with Ukraine's government on its recovery. Now, the appointment was made last week by the president, but today Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky thanked Pritzker and congratulated her on this new post.
Chicago Public Schools employees are starting the school year off with up to 12 weeks of paid parental leave for both birthing and non-birthing parents. The Chicago Board of Education is set to approve the plan next week, now that a joint working group between the Chicago Teachers Union and CPS has tweaked the policy. Until now, birthing parents received 6 to 8 weeks of short-term disability leave, and non-birthing parents, such as adoptive parents, received 2 weeks of paid leave. The change brings CPS employees up to par with other city workers.
The Bears. My goodness. The Bears. More turmoil up at Hallis Hall after disastrous 0-2 start to the season. The team confirms that defensive coordinator Alan Williams has resigned, effective immediately. Williams submitted his resignation in a letter claiming he needed to step back to take care of his health. Williams missed last week's game at Tampa Bay. Head coach Matt Eberflus took over defensive play calling, but the result was still the same.
Poor Bears fans. Coming up in the program, our Spotlight Politics team on the future of tipping in restaurants.
But first, the battle between legal cannabis and the unregulated so-called Delta 8. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
To open a weed dispensary, one must apply for a rare license, pay thousands of dollars in fees, and undergo rigorous regulation. Not so for some alternative cannabis shops that are opening up across the city and sort of operating outside the bounds of the law. That's because they're selling a product derived from hemp called Delta 8, which has all the same properties as THC marijuana. It can be purchased in convenience stores, and there are no age minimums for purchase, unlike tobacco or alcohol. There really isn't much in the way of regulation on it yet, so it's lit up a debate about who can and can't sell these psychoactive substances in Illinois. And here with more, our 2nd Ward Alderman Brian Hopkins, sponsor of an ordinance that would restrict sales of Delta-8 to licensed marijuana dispensaries. Democratic State Representative LaShawn Ford of the 8th District, which includes the west side of Chicago and a number of southwest suburbs. Charles Wu, owner of the Wicker Park Cafe Chai Tiva, which sells hemp-infused products, including menu items featuring Delta-8. And Kareem Kenyatta, co-owner of Star Buds marijuana dispensaries in West Suburban, Riverside, and Burbank. Fascinating debate. We're glad you're here. Charles Wu, so you have this Bucktown shop. You sell Delta-8 infused products like drinks and sweets. What is Delta-8?
Delta-8 nowadays stands for a variety of minor cannabinoids that come from the plant. And it is various forms of THC. If you can imagine, normal THC is vodka, and we have wine, we have seltzer, we have spritzes, and all those sorts of things.
So it's coming from hemp, and other THC cannabis is coming from marijuana, but same properties here. Alderman Hopkins, Delta-8 gets one high, like legal weed would, so why no regulations for this product yet?
Well, because if you have less than 0.3% of the active psycho product in your in whatever it is you're selling, it shouldn't get you high. It's a micro dose, and it shouldn't get you high. The problem is a lot of these unregulated products have found ways to enhance the toxic effect of their product, and people are buying these things not really knowing what the additives might be within them.
And so this is what's not regulated yet. Kareem Kenyatta, as someone who had to go through all the hoops to open a legal cannabis dispensary, what do you think about some of these Delta-8 shops?
Well, you know, since cannabis became effective in 2020, you know, as an operator, we've had to overcome obstacle after obstacle and pay hundreds of thousands of dollars before we were even able to open our door to make our first sale. And so as we sit here today and we talk about these Delta-8 shops who can open basically by just paying a fee to the city and don't have to go through any of the regulations, don't have to comply with zoning or install security systems the same way we do, you know, it really sets up a disadvantage for the same operators that when the state of Illinois passed this, we were supposed to promote and encourage. And these are operators that came from disproportionately impacted areas that have been impacted by the war on drugs. And not to mention a third of our taxes go back into these communities through the R3 program.
All right, so Representative LaShawn Ford, you're trying to kind of set up a framework where these Delta-8 shops can coexist with legal weed. So what would that look like?
I mean, we can't have prohibition. We know prohibition just doesn't work, and I think that Kareem would want to actually ban it. And we don't want to ban it, we want to regulate it so that it's safe, so that we can actually tax it and regulate it. That's the right way to do it. This is a free enterprise. Government is supposed to set up regulations so that businesses could thrive, like Charles.
So Charles, is this product safe? I mean, Alderman Hopkins was mentioning that there are additives and things put into these products that people might not know about. So when they're going to your store, are they getting a product they know is safe, even though there really isn't statewide regulation on it?
Well, in our case, we have been advocating since 2021 to put in robust regulations, which include minimum age, testing, and labeling to prevent minors from buying the products. Now, in our case, we run through a very rigorous testing process. Our testing standards are similar, if not more stringent, than what cannabis has done. And one of the reasons why we're big proponents and supporters of Rep. Ford's bill is it levels the playing field so that people like Kareem cannot complain that, you know, we have an unfair advantage over them in the market.
And Alderman Hopkins, you're trying to introduce an ordinance at the city level. What would your regulations do?
My preference would be to outright ban these products, but instead what I'm doing is suggesting that these products can only be sold in a licensed dispensary. If you're a licensed dispensary, it means you went through the entire process. It means you comply with 650 pages of state regulations. Your product is inspected every step of the way, from the seed to the plant to distribution. We know exactly what's in it, and it's heavily taxed, as most regulated industries are, and you have to comply with all of the rules. We're moving these Delta-8 products under my ordinance into that regulatory environment. And I believe it will be a de facto ban, because most of the licensed dispensaries who went through all of this trouble to get their permits and their license won't want anything to do with these Delta-8 products.
You brought some samples too, because you're kind of upset at some of the marketing here. These packs, Cheetos, Skittles. It looks like something that kids would want to buy, and maybe they don't know what they're getting in there.
It absolutely does, and this is how the issue first came to my attention. I have 2 emergency rooms in my ward, Northwestern Hospital and Lurie Children's Hospital, and I'm hearing from doctors and nurses who are seeing a disturbing increase in children who are reporting to their emergency departments with cannabis toxicity. They've consumed too much of this product, and as you can see, if you're a child, if you're a 12-year-old, you think this is candy, you think this is a game, and because it's an edible product, the delay after you take 1 or 2, you don't feel any kind of intoxicating effect until a couple of hours later, and you might keep taking more, and you wind up in the emergency room.
I think, Charles, you said before we went on that you think those should be regulated and outlawed too. But Kareem Kenyatta, from the perspective of the legal cannabis stores, what would you tolerate in terms of Delta 8 being allowed to be sold in Illinois?
Well, I think we've already created the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act to, in order to sell products that contain THC. And to me, we don't need to create a secondary market. The point of creating the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act was to capture these products. So to say that we now need to create a secondary market and go against everything that we've built into social equity and all the diversity that's been created, we now have black and brown operators that have just become operational. And as I mentioned, all the threats we faced before, this is our biggest threat, because someone that, it takes us almost $1 million just to operate and own 1 store. These operators can open up a tobacco shop right across the street from mine for a fraction of the price. And I don't think any amount of regulation will change that at this point.
All right, what about...
Respectfully, you guys are opening a Delta 8 shop in Burbank, right across from the town next to our shop in Bridgeview.
Well, Charles, let me ask you this, though. Would you find it fair if you and other Delta 8 operators had to eventually go through all the hoops, go through a lottery, pay the kind of license fee that cannabis shops have? Is that a fair solution?
The regulation that we support, that Rep. Fort's puts together very stringent requirements from a testing, from a labeling, and from a compliance perspective that puts us on par with cannabis.
All right.
Can I just say, any operator that will sell that stuff, is that who we want to try to regulate?
We don't support that.
Yeah, we don't support
we
but
don't
you're
want
selling that right now.
Kareem, we have come so far in America and in Illinois when we lifted the ban on cannabis. We want to go back and turn back the hands of time and start criminalizing, creating an underground market for Delta. Just because you ban it doesn't mean it goes away. We need to regulate it and tax it and make sure that it's safe.
But if you do that, are you saying it's not going to hurt his industry, which he's saying they had to jump through so many hoops to get started?
Free enterprise. You have people coming to America now, crossing and walking months because America is a great country where you can set up shop and make a living.
Should they at least have to go through the same kind of apparatus that the legal weed did?
It's happened in other states. You look at Florida. Florida is like Illinois. You've got 20 white guys that own the Florida market. It's a $2 billion market. You've got a Delta hemp market that is open to the public. There are 10,000 businesses in there, and they've provided over $4 billion of economic impact. Many of those 10,000 businesses are minority businesses, are small businesses who started. And guess what? The 20 rich guys that own the cannabis market, they're still growing. All right. The guy in charge that runs his business, he can still make his money.
Clearly a heated debate. Alderman Hopkins, where do you think this is going to go in the city council? Where are they putting their support?
Yeah, it's in the Rules Committee right now. I talked to the chairwoman of the Health Committee. She's willing to hold a hearing on it. Obviously, there's some controversy surrounding this, and there's a lot of issues to sort out. But in the meantime, kids continue to present at the emergency department with cannabis toxicity and related adverse effects from taking these substances. I think it needs to be stopped before somebody dies, which actually there were 2 children who recently died in Pennsylvania from ingesting these gummies, and it's probably just a matter of time before it happens here. We've had some serious medical reactions to this. We need to move quickly, and we need to address this now.
If a kid buys cannabis from a shop, they will have the same reaction. You cannot let kids grab cannabis gummies. They will be in the emergency room as well. It's a fact that we must regulate Delta 8.
But here's the thing. Since 2021, there has been laws in the state of Illinois to regulate this stuff. His business partner, who represents the Cannabis Business Association, killed the bill in 21, killed the bill in 2022, killed the bill in 2023.
Well, there's lots of legislative maneuverings going on.
Can I just add, if we sold those products in our shop, we would lose our license.
All right.
We don't sell those products, and we
got to
don't
leave it there,
condone
but I
those.
appreciate the spirited debate. This is going to be something that we're going to keep following. Charles Wu, Brian Hopkins, LaShawn Ford, Kareem Kenyatta, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And up next, Mayor Johnson calls a special meeting to confirm his pick to lead the police department. Our Spotlight Politics team unpacks that and much more ahead.
Tipped workers in Chicago are now one step closer to getting raises. Meanwhile, Mayor Johnson calls a special meeting to confirm Larry Snelling as Chicago Police Superintendent, and how the city plans to protect South and West Sides from pollution. Here with all that and more is our Spotlight Politics team, Heather Sharon and Paris. So welcome back. Key City Council panel endorsing the tipped minimum wage plan, where all Chicago businesses are required to pay their workers the same minimum hourly wage by July 2028, regardless of whether or not they earn tips. This, if approved by the full City Council next month. Heather, what was the compromise here?
So essentially, the first proposal from Mayor Johnson and his allies were a 2-year phase-in, but that was not acceptable to the restaurant industry, who said that it could potentially push restaurants out of business and cost jobs. So the compromise is a 5-year phase-in, but each year, starting in 2024, tipped workers will see their paycheck rise by at least 8%. So that is a pretty significant wage for people that Mayor Johnson says are underpaid and subject to sexual harassment and other abuse from customers. So they get tips that make up the difference between the city's minimum wage of $15.80 and the tipped minimum wage, which is only $9.48.
What does this tell us about the mayor's collaborative approach, Heather?
Well, if it is approved by the City Council on October 4th, it will represent a major victory of his approach to governance over collaborations, over confrontations. Most people believe he had the votes for that 2-year phase-in, but it would have meant a knockdown, drag-out fight with industry. Instead, he agrees to a 5-year phase-in. Everybody sings kumbaya, everybody is happy, and the mayor gets to demonstrate that he's going to govern differently than any other mayor in the past, collaboratively, not as a dictator.
Paris, how are tipped workers, restaurants, how are they feeling about these possible changes?
Well, I mean, restaurants ideally don't want these changes to go in place, but as Heather said, they're happy about the longer phase, and it is a nice sort of stick that he gave to them to perhaps create a better relationship going forward when other things come up. Tipped workers probably are in favor, although I think we heard one tip worker testify in City Council that wasn't in favor, saying, hey, I work really hard for my tips. I don't want someone coming here thinking that now I make this like higher minimum wage, that they don't have to tip me so much. I don't work for minimum wage. I work for tips, and I make lots of them. So could this conversely lead to people tipping less? And then with restaurants, could it lead to passing on the cost to customers? But we have 5 years to really absorb it and figure it out.
Okay, so in other big City Council news, Heather, you've been reporting that Johnson has called a special City Council meeting for next Wednesday to confirm Chicago Police Chief Larry Snelling to lead the police department. But before that, Snelling has a confirmation hearing this Friday. What can we expect there?
Well, he's going to face pointed questions on a number of issues, but this will be the first chance for progressive alderpeople to push him on how he's going to comply with the consent decree, which of course requires the city to reform itself and is far behind schedule. He's also going to face questions about the department's budget, which was $1.9 billion in 2023. He's also going to face questions about his own disciplinary history, and whether that will be a stumbling block, I think, is a potential for some older people, but there's not a mistake reason that Johnson called a city council meeting for Wednesday after the Friday. Nobody expects any significant opposition to Larry Snelling, who is well-liked and well-known to these older people.
Then what will Wednesday's meeting consist of, this special meeting?
That vote, just the confirmation of Larry Snelling. Very unusual for a special city council meeting to be called for just one item, but perhaps Mayor Johnson missed the 50 older people and wants to see him again.
Oh, just have a nice visit since
Yes.
governing is going so well. Paris, this was the first official week of Illinois courtrooms implementing the elimination of cash bail under the Pretrial Fairness Act. How's it gone on the ground for folks?
By all accounts, we heard from Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox. We heard from Lake County State's Attorney Eric Reinhardt on this program on Monday, and they say smoothly, like they had an extra 9 months now from when they originally were prepared to roll this out. So that's 9 more months as these court challenges played out to really fully prepare, and we haven't heard any real stories of delays in bond court. You know, there's this extra step now that if you are recommending detention without bail, then you have to go to that detention hearing. They have staffed up for that. They're ready for it. We're not hearing that things are getting delayed, but this is the very beginning of a very long process to implement this, so we have to keep watching it.
Of course. So I want to talk about the cumulative impact report. We've got about 45 seconds. Chicago released, Heather, its first cumulative impact assessment this week, analyzing the burden that air, water, soil pollution imposes, particularly on South and West Side neighborhoods. In about 30 seconds, what has Johnson vowed to do about this?
Well, it wasn't a surprise to anyone. Of course, the South and the West Side is heavily burdened by air and water and noise pollution. This report was required by the federal government as part of a settlement of charges that resulted from the General Iron move from Lincoln Park to the southeast side. So this now gives Johnson ammunition to go to the city council and ask for tougher rules for polluting businesses.
Paris, environmentalist activists, what have they been saying about this? What's their reaction?
Well, I mean, positive, more money for mitigation, and then like perhaps zoning decisions that don't put residential areas in these industrial areas. But they've been through so much, especially on the south and southwest side, that I'm sure they're not ready to put all their trust in government quite yet, and they're just going to have to see, you know, what this comes out with.
All right, that's Spotlight. Heather, Paris, thanks, y'all. Up next, keeping a Mexican tradition alive one step at a time. But first, a look at the weather.
As part of Hispanic Heritage Month, we're taking you inside a local dance studio working to keep a Mexican tradition alive. Chicago Tonight's Joanna Hernandez visits the city's northwest side to check it out.
They are carrying on their traditions. This group of young dancers are filled with joy through every step and turn.
It's like so special because like all these like dresses and stuff, they're like so beautiful.
Ariana Jaimes is one of 400 students of all ages taking classes at the Ballet Folklórico de Chicago.
It's about like putting on a show for great people, and I love the steps that we do, and I love performing with the rest of my group.
It all started as an idea for owner Ofelia Guerra.
We were previously looking for a studio, and we realized there was nothing on the north side of Chicago, so I started it off as a kids organization. We started off at the Park District, and we quickly outgrew it, so we're now in this storefront here at Six Corners.
The traditional folkloric dance is meant to express the spirit and Mexican culture of people through its movements and music.
Folklórico is a combination of ballet steps and folkloric traditions from our country, which is influenced by the Europeans and the African and indigenous.
The dance style consists of a lot of footwork, work that 12-year-old Lulu Vasquez says she has fun learning.
I feel proud of myself, and I also feel like that confidence in me. Like I feel like if I'm in the front, I smile and I just do my thing.
The dance organization has given these students the opportunity to perform all across the city and state.
It makes me proud that I could express my culture here in Chicago. Like, you couldn't before, but now I could.
It was time for a lesson.
Ready? Go.
It looks easier than it is.
3, 4. That's a nice one.
It takes coordination and practice to get the technique down. After a few drills, it was time to dance. Keeping the Mexican tradition alive is where Guerra says she found her passion to grow the dance organization.
It's a lot of fun, and I do this out of a labor of love, and I know all the teachers do too. We have 5 teachers here. It's just amazing the way that the culture has brought everybody together.
Hoping her daughters pass it down to the next generation.
I'm proud that she made this organization and she made it so everyone can get together as a community. You need to show your culture to the world.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Joanna Hernandez.
Ballet Folklorico de Chicago is going on its 5th year, and with more students enrolling, the owner is searching for a bigger studio on the city's north side.
Nice moves for Joanna.
Yeah,
that's our
very
show
nice.
for this Wednesday night. Join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe. Have a great night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm whose attorneys embrace a culture of philanthropy and service by volunteering their time, expertise, and guidance to help others in the greater Chicago community.